Hello good people of YouTube. As most of you probably know, if you watch my videos often enough, I love football and history, and therefore naturally love football history as a combination of the two. As such, I have been getting requests to do all-time 11s for clubs and countries ever since I started this channel, and it is something that I would love to do. However, before I started this channel, I wrote the scripts for some all-time international squads for the HITC Sport channel, which really didn't do that well in terms of views. I also made some all-time 7s on this channel for the likes of Manchester United and Barcelona, which didn't do particularly well, and that's why I've held off on doing all-time 11s simply because I don't think they will do very well. To test the water though, and since I have a book coming out sort of relating to this topic next month, today I'm going to show you my all-time England 11, and if this video does surprisingly well, I will be delighted to bring you more all-time 11s in the future. England are the founders of football in its codified form. They dominated the European game up until the 1950s, and they have won one World Cup in 1966. So it's a pretty good place to start, should this prove to be the first of a new series. Here is my all-time England 11. Goalkeeper: Gordon Banks. Who else? England have had a number of incredible goalkeepers over the years, as we shall see with our substitutes and honourable mentions, but none finer than Gordon Banks. The runner-up when I did a video on the 7 greatest goalkeepers of all time back in 2017, which made him our second choice in my HITC Sevens all-time 11, Banks was named as FIFA Goalkeeper of the Year, a world record 6 times. Not particularly tall for a goalkeeper at 6'1", Banks had a natural positional sense and incredible instinctive reflexes. He had lengthy stints with Leicester City and Stoke City, as well as obviously winning the World Cup with England in 1966, and his career at the highest level would have gone on longer were it not for a car crash that left him blinded in one eye in 1972. Banks passed away earlier this year, bizarrely having never been offered a knighthood, and he has to be our number 1. Right back: Jimmy Armfield. From Bob Crompton back in the 1900s to Gary Neville during the 2000s, England have had plenty of very capable right backs, but picking one that stands out above all the rest proved trickier here than in almost any other position. Ultimately, my choice is Blackpool legend Jimmy Armfield. The humblest of all the England greats, Armfield used to joke that anyone could have played behind Stanley Matthews, as he did at Blackpool, but Jimmy Armfield wasn't just anyone. He was a calm, composed and authoritative fullback who rarely put a foot wrong. He made 627 appearances for Blackpool as a one-club man, won 43 caps for England and captained the 3 Lions on 15 occasions. Centre-back: Neil Franklin. Both the crown jewel and the least well-known player in this 11 in many respects, hopefully that is all about to change. Neil Franklin was an absolute gem of a centre-half who thought defenders should be just as capable footballers as attacking midfielders or forwards. He refused to alter his style of play despite criticism from his Stoke City boss Bob McGrory, and ultimately became the finest centre-half in the world and the first name on the England team sheet. Until 1950 that was, when Franklin told the England selectors he wouldn't be available for selection for the 1950 World Cup and sent shockwaves through the British game by upping sticks and making a lucrative move to Bogota in Colombia. Bogota was a hotbed of political unrest at the time, with Colombia in the midst of a brutal civil war which claimed the lives of more than 200,000 people. It was certainly an experience for Franklin, but not a happy one, and he returned to England after just 6 games for Independiente Santa Fe. Upon his return, Franklin was shunned by the FA, who went through 10 inferior centre-halves over the next 5 years as England saw their status reduced greatly on the international stage. As a few of you may know, I have written a book about Neil Franklin, which is a fascinating odyssey of English and South American football, politics and history, all told through the tale of one of England's greatest ever footballers, if I may say so myself. If you wanted to find out a bit more about the book or buy the book, feel free to check out my website www.englandsgreatestdefender.com, but there's no doubt that Neil Franklin is starting in my all-time England 11. Centre-back: Bobby Moore. Starting alongside Franklin in what is a truly sensational looking centre-back partnership, Bobby Moore was held in a similarly high regard to Neil Franklin a generation after the Stoke legend. Moore was also a ball-playing centre-back who was positionally excellent, composed and always capable of switching possession with a beautiful diagonal ball. Best known for his 14 years with West Ham and performances for the England national team, Moore was England's captain in '66, he won 108 caps for the Three Lions in total, and the likes of Alex Ferguson, Franz Beckenbauer and Pelé all described him as the greatest defender of all time. Left back, Ashley Cole. The most recent inclusion in our 11, Ashley Cole, was still playing last season in a Championship playoff final for Derby County. It is his form between 2000 and 2014 that earns Cole a place in this 11 though, spending much of that period as the best left back in the world. England have had some outstanding left backs from Eddie Hapgood to Stuart Pearce, but Cole is my pick. He was smart, athletic, defensively perfect, and a threat when bombing forward down the left flank. He is England's most capped fullback with 107 caps to his name, he never let England down, and the way in which he pocketed Cristiano Ronaldo at his peak on multiple occasions will never be forgotten. Holding midfield, Duncan Edwards. Whilst right back is a close second, holding midfield was undoubtedly the most difficult spot to fill in this 11. Do you prioritise talent, achievement, performances in an England shirt, the balance of the 11 itself? These are all questions one has to ask themselves, but in the end, I've gone for talent and the balance of the side, which brings me to Duncan Edwards. As cruel as it sounds, there is a tendency to overplay the talents of sportspeople, musicians, and entertainers when they die young. That isn't the case with Duncan Edwards though, who is one of the outstanding footballers that England has ever produced. A powerful, intelligent and two-footed defensive midfielder, Edwards was as natural and complete as they come. He died in the Munich air disaster at the age of 21, by which time he already won 18 caps for England and made 177 appearances for Manchester United, and many felt that were it not for his tragic passing, he would have captained England in the 1966 World Cup. Central midfield, Bobby Charlton. Another player on board the British European Airways Flight 609 which crashed at its third attempt to take off from Munich Riem Airport, Bobby Charlton survived the crash and would return from that devastation to become the greatest English footballer to have ever lived. A brilliant box-to-box or attacking midfielder, Charlton was born with the ball at his feet. He was tireless, an excellent passer of the ball, and incredibly prolific from midfield, scoring 249 goals from 758 games for Manchester United and 49 goals from 106 caps for England. The beating heart of this side in our midfield engine room, Charlton brings energy, creativity, and a whole load of goals. He was his club and country's all-time record goalscorer until being overtaken on both fronts by Wayne Rooney, but we should never forget that Charlton was a midfielder. Central midfield, Rach Carter. England has always been able to produce tough, solid centre-backs and prolific centre-forwards. The one type of player the country is often accused of failing to produce has been cultured, intelligent central or attacking midfield playmakers with the spatial awareness, movement, vision and guile to control games and tear teams apart. There have been a few exceptions to that rule, but none finer than Rach Carter. The only man to win the FA Cup before and after World War II, Carter was comically arrogant, but he always knew he could back it up on the pitch. He strolled around the pitch, sometimes playing a different sport to those around him, always the star, and ever capable of turning a game on its head with a single swing of a boot. Right wing, Stanley Matthews. There can only be one player on the right flank, and he's arguably the finest outside right the sport has ever seen. Stanley Matthews came second only to Garrincha in our HITC Sevens all-time greatest right wingers 7, and he's arguably the star man and second only to Bobby Charlton for me in this 11. A master of wing play who was nicknamed the Wizard of the Dribble, there are two things that are outstanding about Stanley Matthews. The first is the way in which he could drop his shoulder and beat his fullback before putting a ball into the box. The second is the fact that his career spanned 33 years from the age of 17 to 50 and still no one quite figured out how to stop him doing that. English football's finest creator, arguably world football's finest winger, Stanley Matthews' spot in our starting 11 was never in doubt. Left wing, Tom Finney. Tom Finney played predominantly as a right winger at club level but spent the majority of his international career out on the left due to the genius of Stanley Matthews. It's a similar story for the Preston legend here, but thankfully, he was just as good on the left as he was on the right. A wide player more akin to those we see today, Finney was much more prolific than Matthews, more fond of cutting inside and striking on goal. He scored 30 goals from 76 caps for England from wide areas and single-handedly made Preston one of the top teams in England for more than a decade. Any all-time England 11 without Tom Finney is incomplete. Centre forward, Jimmy Greaves. The number 9 shirt is a richly competitive one when it comes to England, from World Cup Golden Boot winners like Gary Lineker and Harry Kane to the country's all-time leading goalscorer Wayne Rooney and pre-war hero Dixie Dean. As fierce as the competition is though, one man stands out above all the rest as far as I'm concerned. Jimmy Greaves is the all-time record goalscorer in the history of top-flight English football, despite the fact his career was just about finished at 30. Greaves broke into the Chelsea team at 17 and scored 22 goals in 37 games in his debut campaign. That was child's play in comparison to what was to come, as Greaves averaged a goal a game at his very best. Greaves was previously England's all-time record goalscorer and is by far the most prolific of England's top 5 goalscorers with 44 goals from just 57 caps. He played all 3 group games for England in the 1966 World Cup, but missed out on the knockout stages through injury and was replaced by Geoff Hurst. A born goalscorer who's quick, brilliant on the ball and utterly devastating in front of goal, Greaves could tie defenders in knots and beat the goalkeeper however he wished. England have had some great centre forwards, but none greater than Jimmy Greaves. The team, including substitutes and a manager. The bench was even harder to pick than the starting 11 here in many respects, just due to the volume of candidates and wanted to give everyone some kind of recognition, but I've given it my best shot. In goal, just edging out Peter Shilton, is Frank Swift. There are very many centre-backs I will soon mention, but the one who takes the place of my 7-man bench is Rio Ferdinand. A true Rolls-Royce of a defender who fits the ball-playing Franklin and more mould, Ferdinand is the finest centre-back of the Premier League era, and he could do it all at his best. Next up we have Billy Wright, the first England international to reach 100 caps for the Three Lions. Wright started out as a right half, which was his best position, before being asked to replace the exiled Franklin long-term at centre half. An accomplished footballer and a first-class professional, Wright is a dream to have on the bench since he can cover at centre-back, right-back and in defensive midfield. Also as backup in midfield, and this was the one I ummed and ahed about for the longest, I have to go for Brian Robson. A bit like Steven Gerrard in the sense they could do it all, Robson was even better than Gerrard. A little bit like Charlton in the 60s, he was all action. Tireless, tenacious, creative and prolific, Robson was Captain Fantastic, and if it wasn't for 3 leg breaks and countless hamstring injuries, he'd probably make the 11 itself. Joining Robson on the bench is Glenn Hoddle, who is a player any manager would dream of having on their bench. Cover for Carter and Charlton as an attacking midfielder, but also out wide on the flanks, Hoddle is one of the finest technicians English footballers ever produced. Brilliant on the ball and a genius in the past, of all our Mavericks, Hoddle is the one who has to at least make the bench. We have 2 centre forwards on our bench, such is our strength there, and we start with the one who ran Jimmy Greaves the closest for a starting berth, Tommy Lawton. Lawton was the complete centre forward. He was quick, strong, good on the ball, he could create, he was absolutely ruthless in front of goal and a complete monster in the air. He won 23 caps for England and scored 22 goals. Alongside him, as an altogether very different option, is Gary Lineker. Lineker wasn't a brilliant footballer like Lawton and Greaves, but he was an outstanding goalscorer. His instincts and anticipation were first class, and he was such a live wire in the 6-yard box. He bagged 48 goals from 80 caps for England, and always turned up on the biggest of stages. In terms of players who missed out, it would be impossible to mention them all, but I'll quickly acknowledge the likes of Peter Shilton, John Terry, Sol Campbell, Jack Charlton, Stan Cullis, Bob Crompton, Roy McFarland, Paul Scholes, Steven Gerrard, Frank Lampard, Joe Mercer, Paul Gascoigne, David Beckham, Stan Mortensen, Wilf Mannion, Dixie Dean, Nat Lofthouse, Wayne Rooney, Michael Owen and Geoff Hurst. In charge of our 11, it's a choice between Alf Ramsey, who obviously won the World Cup with England in 1966, and Brian Clough, who famously never got the chance to manage England, but guided both Derby County and Nottingham Forest from the bottom half of the second division to domestic and European titles. My choice is Clough, since he'd also be far more entertaining. To recap, our starting 11, which reminds me a bit of a Pep Guardiola team, with 2 ball-playing centre-backs, only 1 holding midfielder, 2 really creative attacking midfield players, a couple of wingers, and a lone striker, reads like this: Gordon Banks, Jimmy Armfield, Neil Franklin, www.englandsgreatestdefender.com, Bobby Moore, Ashley Cole, Duncan Edwards, Bobby Charlton, Rach Carter, Stanley Matthews, Tom Finney, and Jimmy Greaves, with a bench made up of Frank Swift, Rio Ferdinand, Billy Wright, Brian Robson, Glenn Hoddle, Tommy Lawton and Gary Lineker, all managed by two-time European Cup winning boss Brian Clough. What a team. Even if this video does brilliantly and I get to do 100 more of these, there won't be too many that could live with that team. Thanks for watching, give the video a like if you enjoyed it, subscribe, turn on notifications, you know the drill. But most importantly of all, make sure to go to www.englandsgreatestdefender.com.